Welcome again to the Starlings.One podcast. I'm Patrick. Today we have a very special article that I'm very proud of, written by a mysterious author, myself. It's basically an article I wrote about prediction market platforms towards the end of 2023, so getting up there in terms of articles go. But what I was interested in when I wrote this thing was what is the ideal prediction market platform. I had been using a very popular prediction market platform called Manifold.Markets for a while, and decided to poll a bunch of the users on there because I was curious, what are people's motivations? What keeps them coming back? And Manifold at the time was a purely points-based prediction market, so not using any real money. You could buy points in the game, but you could never redeem those points, so it's not really a gambling platform as much as a pure points-based prediction market, which was unique at the time, especially for the user base that they had, about 1,000 users or so. And it had a very and still continues to have a very enthusiastic user base, so it's just very interesting to me. So I went back and went through the whole history of prediction markets, where they came from, what some of the popular prediction markets and use cases were. Since I wrote this article, I've found that there have actually been far more use cases of past prediction markets, especially being used as decision-making tools in the corporate space. We'll just kind of set those aside for now, and just give you more of a high-level overview of what were the different different stages throughout the 80s, 90s, and 2000s within prediction markets. I hope you enjoyed this article. Link is in the description if you want to actually read it. Otherwise, the remainder of the podcast will be our AI hosts just giving you a high-level overview. I have to say it was pretty interesting hearing them talk about me, say my name within the podcast. Gave me a little bit of an ego boost, so maybe the next time I'm not feeling the greatest, I'll just write up some gobbledygook and generate a podcast about myself. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, hope you enjoy it. Thanks. And I almost forgot. Jump on over to Starlings.One for more information. Check out all of our different socials. And you can also check out our completely open source and MIT licensed prediction market called Social Predict. If you just search Social Predict on GitHub or just Google or whatever way you want to find it online. You know how to find things. Just search Social Predict, prediction market. All right, great. Thanks. Enjoy the episode.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep into prediction markets today. Specifically, this super insightful newsletter called I'll Keep This Short.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one. Really gets you thinking.
It does. It's by Patrick Delaney, and it really unpacks a lot about their history, challenges, potential, all that.
Yeah, and really tries to answer, like, what makes a prediction market platform successful?
And why so many fail, right?
Mm.
It's crazy. He actually points out that the average lifespan is like only 9 years for a prediction market platform.
Wow, 9 years, that's it.
That's what he says, yeah. Tough business, I guess. But before we get into all the reasons why they fail, maybe we should take a look back, kind of see where it all started.
Yeah, take a trip down memory lane.
Right. Back to like the late 80s, early internet days, we had platforms like the Iowa electronic markets popping up.
Oh, wow, the Iowa electronic markets, yep.
People predicting election results online back then. Can you imagine?
It was dial-up.
Dial-up. I can't even picture it.
Yeah.
But it shows you how long this idea has been around, you know?
For sure, for sure.
And then as the internet evolved, got a little more sophisticated, we saw those web-based platforms start to emerge in the early 2000s.
The dot-com boom. All those.
Oh, remember the Hollywood Stock Exchange?
Yeah, that was a fun one.
Predicting which movies would be box office hits.
Instead of soybean futures.
Right. Delaney even mentions that, soybean futures. So there was a lot of variety even back then, but like a lot of those early platforms, they struggled. They just couldn't quite get it right.
No, they didn't. The newsletter really highlights, I think, two main reasons: trust and liquidity.
Makes sense.
Like, would you risk your money or even your reputation on a platform that seems kind of shady or where nobody's really participating.
Yeah, it's like throwing a party and nobody shows up. You're just standing there awkwardly by yourself.
Exactly. So even with some cool ideas, a lot of those early platforms, they just kind of fizzled out.
And then, of course, around 2015, we had the rise of blockchain.
Oh, yeah. Blockchain was going to fix everything, right?
It was the answer. The promise of decentralization, transparency, all that. It was alluring for sure, but
Didn't really pan out for most.
didn't really pan out, no. Most of those platforms didn't really take off either.
It's almost like a cycle.
It is innovation, disappointment, innovation, disappointment.
Yeah. And what's even more interesting, the author points out that even FTX,
Oh no, don't tell me.
Sam Bankman-Fried, that whole debacle, they used a prediction market.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
It really makes you think about, like, the potential for manipulation that's almost built into the system.
It's a little unnerving.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So is there a platform that's, like, actually figured it out?
that's the million-dollar question, right? Well, there is one that Delaney highlights that seems to be doing a lot of things right. Manifold.Markets.
Manifold.Markets. Okay. I've heard of that one.
So what's interesting is they ditched real money altogether. Yeah, they went with this reputation-based system. So users earn points for accurate predictions. There's a big emphasis on, respectful discussion, debate, all that.
So more about bragging rights than, like, actually making money.
Exactly. But that kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? Like, how do they attract users? Not everyone's motivated by just, like, internet points,
I
right?
think so.
Well, Delaney actually digs into the demographics of Manifold.Markets users. And while it's diverse in some ways, he points out that certain groups are still underrepresented.
Yeah, if these platforms are supposed to be tapping into collective intelligence, we need a wider range of voices, right?
Absolutely.
And it seems like Manifold Markets realizes this too. They've actually been polling their users about what they want to see in a prediction market platform, and the results are pretty interesting. They want markets that cover both short-term and long-term predictions.
Okay, so a mix.
And get this, they actually prefer platforms that aren't heavily curated, meaning, users get to create their own markets without too much interference. Interesting. So they want freedom to kind of explore their own ideas, not just what's given to them.
Exactly. But what about the motivation? Why are people participating in the first place? Well, according to their poll, enjoyment and gaming are the top motivators, even more so than a pure desire for, truth-seeking.
Really? So they're in it for the fun of it.
Seems like it. They're drawn to the challenge, the competition.
Like a game almost.
Exactly.
But wait, doesn't that kind of undermine the whole point of prediction markets? Like if people are just in it for fun, how can we trust the accuracy of the predictions?
That's a great question, and one that Delaney explores in the newsletter. He actually suggests that this, what he calls gamification of prediction markets, might actually be a key to their success.
How so?
Well, by making them engaging, fun, they attract a wider audience, tap into a wider range of perspectives. It's like turning learning into a game, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. But, we've all seen how online communities can go wrong. How does a platform like Manifold Markets deal with issues like, free speech, harassment, things like that?
That is a really good point. It's a tough balance, right? Well, Delaney dives into this whole, thorny issue, he calls it. Points out that their poll results actually show that Manifold and Markets users, they lean towards prioritizing free thinking, but they also understand the need for, like, some guardrails, to keep things from getting out of hand.
So how do they walk that line?
Well, he highlights a few potential solutions. Things like opt-out tools, so users don't have to see certain types of content if they don't want to, clear content guidelines that spell out what's acceptable, empowering users to report issues, and even providing, like, anonymity options for vulnerable groups who might be, hesitant to speak out.
Those all sound like good steps in the right direction. But even with all that, isn't there still potential for, abuse? What about those alt accounts we hear so much about?
Ah, yes, the alt account conundrum. It's definitely a headache for these online platforms. And prediction markets are no exception. People using multiple accounts, often for, not so great purposes.
And how big of a problem is this, really?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. There's a whole spectrum of opinions.
Yeah.
Some people think it's a huge issue, others not so much.
So a mixed bag.
Mixed bag. And the newsletter dives into all of that. But here's where it gets even more interesting. He connects this whole alt account issue to the broader conversation about AI safety. AI safety. Hold on. How are those two things related?
Right. It sounds kind of out there.
It does.
But he argues that the challenges we face in prediction markets, with navigating free speech, preventing harm, empowering users, They actually mirror a lot of the challenges we face when we're trying to develop safe and ethical AI systems.
So you're saying there's a connection between like people using fake accounts to mess with prediction markets and
Right.
preventing robots from taking over the world.
It might sound far-fetched, but the parallels are there. It's all about creating systems that can harness the power of collective intelligence, whether it's human or artificial, right?
Okay, I'm starting to see the connection.
While also safeguarding against manipulation and unintended consequences.
Wow, I never thought about it that way before.
It's kind of mind-blowing. And it really highlights the complexity of these platforms and how the lessons we learned from them, they could have implications far beyond, just predicting election results or movie box office numbers.
Absolutely. So Delaney goes on to discuss how AI itself could actually play a role in content moderation. Imagine algorithms that can help identify and flag potentially harmful content, suggest edits, even summarize complex arguments.
It's like having a superpowered moderator that never sleeps. But wouldn't that be giving AI too much control? I mean, who decides what's considered harmful?
Exactly. It's both exciting and a little bit unnerving, isn't it? Like, we're stepping into some sci-fi territory here. It raises all sorts of ethical questions.
Big time. It's something we need to think about very carefully, along with the potential for bias and manipulation, who's building these algorithms, what are their motivations, all of that.
We've gone from soybean futures to the future of humanity in just a few minutes.
That's what I love about these deep dives. You start with one question, and it leads you down all these unexpected paths.
It's a wild ride, that's for sure. So for you, what stood out the most from this exploration of prediction markets so far?
For me, it's that unexpected connection between prediction markets and AI safety. It's like they're both grappling with this idea of collective intelligence. How do we harness it? How do we keep it from, going off the rails, whether it's human intelligence or artificial intelligence?
Yeah, it's like they're two sides of the same coin almost. And it really makes you think about how we approach these things. It's not just about building a better prediction platform or, a smarter AI. It's about building systems that actually align with our values, our priorities as humans.
Exactly. And that brings us back to Manifold.Markets and how they're handling this whole content moderation thing. Remember all those potential solutions Delaney talked about?
Hmm.
The content guidelines, the reporting features, all that?
Yeah.
Well, those same ideas, those principles, could apply to AI development as well.
So instead of just focusing on preventing AI from doing something harmful, we'd also be thinking about how it learns, how it communicates, even how it makes decisions. It's like setting ethical boundaries,
Yeah.
right?
We're essentially trying to instill values in these AI systems, just like we try to cultivate a positive community in a prediction market.
And just like Manifold.Markets gives users tools to, report issues, opt out of certain content. Maybe we need similar mechanisms for people to provide feedback and oversight on AI development. More transparency, more accountability.
It's all about that, right? Transparency and accountability, whether we're talking about human intelligence or artificial intelligence. But let's not forget the potential for AI to actually help with this whole content moderation challenge. Delaney suggested that algorithms could be used to, flag potentially harmful content, even suggest edits, summarize arguments.
Yeah, I remember that part. It sounded both really cool and kind of freaky at the same time. Like, are we giving AI too much power over what we see and hear?
It's a double-edged sword for sure.
Hmm.
On one hand, AI could potentially help us sift through all this information so much faster than we ever could, find the problematic stuff. But yeah, we have to be very, very careful about how we design and deploy these tools.
Couldn't agree more. We don't want to create systems that are too restrictive or biased or easily manipulated. And how do you even define harmful in a way that an algorithm can understand? It's a minefield.
It really is. Which is why, even as we explore all these possibilities with AI, we have to remember the importance of human oversight. Humans have to be the ones making those final decisions, making sure these systems are aligned with our values.
Technology should serve us, not the other way around. That's a good reminder. But let's step back for a second. Let's go back to that core question. What makes a prediction market platform successful?
Well, Delaney highlighted a few key ingredients: trust, liquidity, and of course, engaging experiences. Let's start with trust. Users need to believe that the platform is fair, transparent, that their input is valued.
It's like any relationship, really. You need that foundation of trust for it to work. What about liquidity? I remember that being a big stumbling block for those early platforms.
Right. Liquidity is all about how easily predictions can be made and resolved. You need enough people participating, actively engaging for the market to function properly. Think of it like a bustling marketplace, you know? You want lots of buyers and sellers, lots of action happening. Without that, things just kind of stagnate.
So it's not just about having a cool idea or a fancy platform. You need that critical mass of users, people who are actually participating, making predictions.
Yeah.
And it can't just feel like, some dry academic exercise either.
Right.
There has to be that element of engagement.
Absolutely. Prediction markets shouldn't feel like homework. They should be fun, interactive, maybe even a little bit addictive. Remember Delaney's analysis of Manifold. Markets showed that for a lot of users, enjoyment in gaming were the top motivators.
It's about tapping into that competitive spirit, testing your knowledge against others, maybe even a little bragging rights.
Exactly. Think of it like a game, but one where you're constantly learning, debating, sharpening your understanding of, complex issues.
Like a giant collaborative brain teaser. But of course, there's that potential dark side we talked about. These platforms can be manipulated, there could be bias, even abuse. How do you guard against those risks while still encouraging that open exploration, that engagement?
Million-dollar question, right? And there's no easy answer. It takes a multi-pronged approach. Careful platform design, robust moderation systems, clear guidelines for how users should behave.
And we have to keep evaluating those safeguards, evolving them as new challenges pop up. It's like a game of whack-a-mole sometimes.
That's a great analogy.
Mm-hmm.
And it highlights the need for constant dialogue, collaboration between the developers, the users, even policymakers. We have to be constantly learning, adapting, and figuring out how to mitigate those risks without stifling innovation.
It's a tough balancing act. But even with all these challenges, there's something so fascinating about prediction markets. It's like they offer this glimpse into the collective wisdom of crowds, a way to tap into all those different perspectives and insights that are out there.
And they can be incredibly valuable tools for understanding the world, making informed decisions.
Mhm.
But we can't forget that they're not a magic bullet. You shouldn't replace critical thinking or analysis or even good old-fashioned intuition.
They're a tool in the toolkit, and it's up to us to use them wisely, responsibly. So, as we continue this deep dive, what are some of the key questions we should be asking ourselves? What are the biggest challenges, the biggest opportunities moving forward?
One big question is, how do we ensure that these platforms are truly representative, inclusive? We need to break out of those echo chambers, those filter bubbles that we see so often online.
If we're really trying to tap into collective intelligence, everyone needs a seat at the table. And that brings us to the challenge of bias. Bias in the design of the platforms, bias in the data that feeds them.
We always have to be asking ourselves, who's building these systems?
Yeah.
Who's benefiting? And whose voices are being left out? It's about creating a level playing field, a place where diverse perspectives can be heard, can be considered.
And then there's this whole question of balancing freedom and responsibility. We want open discussion, debate, but we also have to protect users from harm. Make sure these platforms are used for good.
It's the classic dilemma, isn't it? How much freedom is too much? Where do you draw that line? No easy answers. But it's a conversation we have to have.
We're just scratching the surface here, and it's amazing to see how these lessons from prediction markets, they could apply to so many other areas, like AI development.
Exactly. As we wrap up this part of the discussion, I'm left thinking about a question that Delaney posed. If prediction markets are a reflection of our collective intelligence, what does their current state tell us about ourselves? And what kind of future do we want to create together?
That's a pretty profound thought, isn't it? It's like they're holding up a mirror, showing us all our smarts and our not so smart moments.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, if we can't even predict the future accurately, does that mean we're not very good at actually shaping it?
Well, let's not go down that rabbit hole, but I think it's safe to say, the current state of prediction markets, it kind of shows that we're still figuring this whole thing out. This balance between, individual freedom and collective responsibility.
For sure. On one hand, we have this drive to explore, experiment, push the limits, right? Look at all the different types of prediction markets that have popped up over the years. Election predictions, movie box office, even scientific breakthroughs.
It's like we're always looking for new ways to test our knowledge, see what's possible.
Exactly. But then there's the other side of it. We can be so easily influenced. Misinformation, powerful people, even our own biases.
Yeah, even when we try to pool our knowledge, we can still make some pretty bad calls.
Which is why it's so important to, approach prediction markets with a healthy dose of skepticism. Question your assumptions. Be aware of the potential for manipulation. Don't just blindly follow the crowd.
Right. Be informed, be engaged, but don't just be a sheep. But even with all that, I still find this whole world so fascinating. It really feels like we're getting a glimpse into what's possible when we combine all our knowledge, our insights.
It's the power of collective intelligence. And you can use it for so many things. Forecasting trends, identifying risks, even coming up with solutions to tough problems. Imagine using prediction markets to guide policy decisions or speed up scientific discoveries or even predict disease outbreaks.
It's almost like a crystal ball, but one that's constantly being updated by, millions of people.
The key is using them responsibly, ethically, making sure they benefit everyone. We have to be aware of those potential pitfalls, the bias, the manipulation.
And we have to keep learning, adapting, it's an ongoing process. And it takes all of us, developers, users, policymakers, everyone.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into prediction markets, I'm left with this one thought that Delaney brings up. If prediction markets are really a reflection of our collective intelligence, what do they tell us about ourselves right now? And more importantly, what kind of future do we want to build together?
That's a great question to leave everyone with lots to think about. So keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and keep those imaginations running wild. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. I